The massive council chamber on Vex Prime hummed with the voices of 1,000 alien species. Representatives from across the galaxy had gathered for what many called the most important meeting in 3,000 years. The air shimmered with translation fields as creatures of every shape and size discussed the future of their civilizations. Elder Counselor Thecamar stood at the center podium. His 6 arms moved in graceful patterns as he spoke. The Vrelian had lived for over 2,000 years and remembered the old days of war. His scaled hide bore the scars of ancient battles, though few in the chamber had ever seen real combat. My fellow beings, Thecmar's voice carried across the vast space. We face a crisis unlike any in our recorded history. Our people grow soft. Our warriors have forgotten their purpose. Our youth know nothing of struggle or conquest. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. The Galactic Alliance had indeed grown stagnant. Worlds that once produced mighty fleets now struggled to maintain basic defenses. Species that had once conquered star systems now spent their time on art and philosophy. For 3 millennia, we have known peace, Thecmar continued. But peace without purpose leads to decay. Our ancestors would weep to see what we have become. Soft, weak, afraid of our own shadows. In the Earth delegation section, Ambassador Kim Dae-ho sat quietly. The middle-aged human wore a simple black suit that looked plain next to the elaborate robes and armor of other delegates. His dark eyes watched Thecmar with careful attention. Next to him, his aide Park Soo-jin took notes on a small tablet. We must return to the old ways, Thecmar declared. Not to destroy but to strengthen ourselves. We need a gentle war, a teaching moment, something to remind us all what it means to be strong. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some species cheered the idea while others looked worried. The peaceful years had been good for trade and culture, but Thecmar was right about the military decay. Most worlds could barely defend themselves against pirates, let alone real threats. But who would we fight? Called out Representative Zelnok of the hegemony. All known civilizations are part of our alliance. There are no enemies left to battle. Thecmar smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. That is where fortune smiles upon us, friends. Our deep space scouts have discovered something wonderful. A new world. A primitive planet with young creatures, who call themselves humans. Dae-ho's expression didn't change, but Soo-jin noticed his fingers tap once on the armrest of his chair. She continued taking notes as if nothing had happened. These humans, Thecmar continued, are perfect for our needs. They are young, having only recently developed space travel. Their technology is crude. Their military consists of small ships and basic weapons. They know nothing of real warfare. The elder pulled up a holographic display showing Earth. Yadis, blue and green world spun slowly as data scrolled beside it. Population numbers, technology assessments, military capabilities, all marked as primitive or basic by Alliance standards. Best of all, Thecmar said with obvious pleasure, they have only one world, no colonies, no deep space installations. Everything they have is concentrated in one system. It will be the perfect training ground for our young warriors. More cheers erupted from the war-minded species. The Korthak delegates banged their fists on their desks. The flying Zephyrians screeched their approval. Even some of the more peaceful races nodded thoughtfully. This will not be conquest, Thecmar assured the worried-looking delegates. This will be education. For them and for us. We will show them the glory of proper warfare, teach them to be worthy opponents. In return, they will help us remember what it means to be strong. Representative Yulthan of the Peaceful Collective raised a tentacled arm. What if they resist? What if they fight back? Laughter filled the chamber. Thecmar's smile grew wider. My friend, look at their data. Their largest warship is smaller than our scout vessels. Their strongest weapons are chemical explosives. They still use metal projectiles in combat. What resistance could they possibly offer? More laughter followed. Even some of the peaceful species chuckled at the idea. The humans' technology looked like ancient museum pieces compared to Alliance standards. The plan is simple, Thecmar continued. Each member species will contribute ships and warriors. We will approach their world openly, announce our intentions, and give them time to prepare. Then we will engage in glorious educational combat. Our young warriors will learn. Their defenders will learn. Everyone benefits. Deho finally spoke up. "Excuse me, Elder Counselor." The chamber fell quiet. Many had forgotten the human representative was even present. Tekmar looked down at the small human with obvious amusement. "Yes, little human? Do you wish to plead for your world's mercy?" Deho stood slowly. His voice carried clearly through the translation fields. "I was wondering about the timeline for this educational exercise." "How thoughtful of you to ask," Tekmar replied. "We are not unreasonable. Your people will have one standard year to prepare. Surely that is enough time to make things interesting." Deho nodded politely. "Very generous. And you plan to announce this publicly?" "Of course. What glory is there in surprise attacks?" "No. We will broadcast our intentions across the galaxy. Let all civilizations see how the Alliance returns to strength. Your people will have time to build defenses, gather allies if they can find any, and prepare for the most educational war in galactic history." "I see." Deho's tone remained calm and respectful. "Thank you for the clarification, Elder Counselor." The human sat back down. Sujin glanced at him curiously but said nothing. Around them, the other delegates continued discussing details of the coming conflict. Fleet compositions, rules of engagement, victory conditions, all planned like a sporting event rather than actual warfare. As the session continued, Sujin noticed something odd. Every time another species made a particularly boastful claim about their military might, Deho's shoulders would shake slightly. At first, she thought he might be afraid. Then she realized he was suppressing laughter. Hours later, the Great Declaration was finalized. The Galactic Alliance officially announced the end of 3,000 years of peace. Earth would serve as the testing ground for their return to military strength. The human delegates were given official copies of the Declaration and allowed to return home to warn their people. As they walked to their ship, Sujin finally spoke. "Sir, you seemed amused during the session." Deho waited until they were inside their vessel before responding. Once the door sealed and their privacy was assured, he finally let himself smile. "Sujin, do you remember what I did before becoming an ambassador?" "You were military, sir. Strategic planning, I believe." 23 years in the Solar Defense Force, Deho confirmed. "And do you know what we've been doing for the past 50 years? Ever since we first detected alien signals?" Sujin shook her head. Deho activated the ship's secure communication system. "We've been preparing for this exact scenario. Every merchant vessel in our fleet, every mining station in our system, every research facility on our worlds. All of it designed with one purpose in mind. The communication system connected to Earth. On the screen appeared Li Byung-woo, a stern-faced man in what looked like a merchant captain's uniform. "Ambassador," Li said with a slight smile. "I take it the meeting went well?" "Better than we hoped, Commander," Deho replied. "They've given us a full year to prepare and they plan to announce their intentions publicly." Li's smile grew broader. "How considerate of them. I'll inform the fleet. Should we begin the final preparations?" "Yes. And Commander, make sure everyone understands. This is not a drill anymore. After 3,000 years of wondering what we were training for, we finally have our answer." As their ship departed Vex Prime, Sujin watched the massive alien fleet formations through the viewport. Hundreds of vessels from dozens of species, all preparing for what they thought would be an easy victory against primitive humans. "Sir," she said quietly, "shouldn't we be worried? They have so many ships." Deho chuckled softly. "Sujin, they've been at peace for 3,000 years. We've been preparing for war for 50. The only question now is how long it will take them to realize their mistake." Behind them, Vex Prime grew smaller in the distance. Ahead lay Earth and what the Alliance believed would be the galaxy's easiest conquest. Neither side knew it yet, but the Great Declaration had just started, the shortest war in galactic history. The news of the Galactic Alliance's declaration reached Earth 3 days later. President Chen Wei-ming called an emergency session of the Global Defense Council in Seoul. World leaders gathered in person and through secure channels, their faces showing a mix of concern and something else, anticipation. Choi Min-ho entered the briefing room carrying a thick folder marked with security classifications that didn't officially exist. As Chief of Solar System Defense, he had been waiting for this moment his entire career. His father had waited for it. His grandfather had died still waiting for it. "Ladies and gentlemen," President Chen began, "you've all read the Alliance's declaration. They're giving us 1 year to prepare for what they call an educational war. I've asked Director Choi to brief us on our actual capabilities." Choi stood and activated the room's holographic display. Instead of showing Earth's official military assets, the small fleet of patrol ships and defensive satellites that the aliens had cataloged, the display revealed something entirely different. "For the past 57 years, Choi began, since we first detected alien radio signals, humanity has operated under a single assumption. Eventually, someone would try to conquer us. Every decision, every project, every allocation of resources has been made with this possibility in mind. The hologram showed Earth's solar system, but not as the aliens saw it. Mining stations revealed themselves as heavily armed fortresses. Merchant shipping lanes became tactical supply networks. Research facilities transformed into weapons laboratories and training centers. Our mining operation on Ceres," Choi continued, "is actually the largest military shipyard in human history. The scientific research stations throughout the asteroid belt are automated defense platforms, each one capable of destroying a battleship. What the aliens cataloged as commercial traffic is actually the largest fleet ever assembled by any single species." Song Hae-jin, Director of Human Weapons Development, took over the presentation. Her calm demeanor hid decades of work preparing for this exact moment. Every piece of human technology has been developed with military applications in mind. Our civilian spacecraft use military-grade hulls and engines. Our commercial computers run tactical software. Our entertainment systems train our population in strategic thinking. She pulled up weapon specifications that made the room fall silent. Plasma cannons disguised as mining equipment. Kinetic bombardment systems hidden in orbital construction. Platforms. Stealth technology that could make entire fleets invisible to alien sensors. "The Alliance believes we use metal projectiles," Song continued with a slight smile. "They're not entirely wrong. We do use kinetic weapons, specifically tungsten rods accelerated to 40% of light speed. One projectile can crack a continent." Kang Tae-jun, leader of the Terran Marine Corps, stood next. Unlike the others, he wore a military uniform, though it looked nothing like what the aliens expected human soldiers to wear. His armor was sleek, powered, and incorporated technology that wouldn't look out of place in an Alliance laboratory. "Human ground forces," Kang announced, "currently number 47 million active personnel. Not the few 100,000 the aliens detected. We've been training in asteroid bases, underground facilities, and off-world colonies they don't know exist." The holographic display showed human soldiers in action. They moved with impossible speed and precision, their powered armor allowing feats that defied alien understanding of biology. Combat footage showed humans surviving in vacuum, lifting massive weights, and reacting faster than alien targeting systems could track. "Every human citizen," Kang continued, "receives basic military training through our educational and entertainment systems. Our video games are tactical simulators. Our sports programs teach squad-based combat. Our emergency drills prepare civilians for orbital bombardment and ground invasion." President Chen leaned forward. "What about their fleet strength? The intelligence reports suggest they're gathering ships from across the galaxy." Han Jun-seo, captain of the Earth vessel Soul's Pride, laughed quietly. "Mr. President, they're gathering museum pieces. Most Alliance species haven't built real warships in centuries. Their dreadnoughts use technology we surpassed 20 years ago." The display shifted to show comparative analyses. Alliance vessels were large, impressive, and completely obsolete by human standards. Their weapons were designed for show rather than efficiency. Their armor prioritized appearance over protection. Their tactics hadn't evolved beyond ceremonial formations. They've been at peace for 3,000 years, Han continued. We've been at war with the idea of them for 57 years. Every simulation, every war game, every tactical exercise has been designed around fighting technologically superior alien forces. Except it turns out they're not superior anymore. Yoon So-young, Admiral of the Terran Home Fleet, activated her section of the presentation. The display showed the real human fleet. Not the few dozen vessels the aliens had catalogued, but thousands of warships hidden throughout the solar system. Our stealth technology, Yoon explained, is 50 years ahead of anything in the Alliance. Database. They can't detect our ships unless we want them to. They can't track our movements unless we allow it. As far as their sensors are concerned, most of our fleet doesn't exist. She pulled up tactical projections showing possible battle scenarios. In every simulation, the alien forces were overwhelmed within hours of engagement. Their formations broke apart under focused fire. Their command structures collapsed when key vessels were eliminated. Their retreat routes were cut off by forces they never saw coming. The biggest challenge, Yoon continued, will be not destroying them too quickly. If we eliminate their entire fleet in the first hour, they might think it was some kind of technical malfunction rather than military defeat. Bae Dong-hyuk, the solar system's chief navigator, stood to address the room. His expertise in space tactics had earned him respect throughout the human military, though the aliens had no idea he existed. We've mapped every possible approach route to Earth, Bae announced. We've identified optimal ambush points, supply, choke points, and retreat barriers. We know exactly where they'll come from and exactly how to respond. They're planning their invasion using public stellar charts that are deliberately 50 years out of date. The room erupted in quiet laughter. The aliens were planning their attack using information that showed asteroid positions, space traffic, and defensive installations that hadn't existed for decades. Meanwhile, humanity had been tracking their movements since before the declaration was even announced. There's something else, Choi said, his tone becoming more serious. Our deep space monitoring network detected something interesting. Several Alliance species are sending their oldest ships and least experienced crews. They really do think this is just a training exercise. President Chen nodded slowly. So we have a choice. We can reveal our true capabilities immediately, or we can play along with their educational war scenario. With respect, Mr. President, Song interjected, I don't think we have that luxury. Our analysis suggests that revealing our full strength too quickly might trigger a real invasion by the Alliance's more serious military powers. Better to let them think we're just surprisingly competent primitives. Admiral Yoon agreed. We should give them the educational experience they wanted, just not the education they expected. The meeting continued for hours, as humanity's real leaders planned their response to the Alliance's declaration. News broadcasts would show concerned politicians calling for calm. Military officials would make public statements about upgrading defenses and preparing for the worst. The general population would be told that humanity faced a significant challenge, but that their leaders were confident in their preparations. None of it would be lies exactly, just not the complete truth. As the meeting concluded, President Chen made one final announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, we've trained for this moment for decades. Our parents trained for it. Our grandparents died preparing for it. Now it's our turn to show the galaxy what humanity is really capable of. Choi gathered his classified materials as the leaders dispersed. Tomorrow, he would begin the public phase of humanity's preparations. Construction projects would accelerate. Military recruitment would increase. Defense contracts would multiply. All of it visible to alien observers. All of it seeming like desperate preparation by a primitive world. Meanwhile, the real preparations would continue in secret. The hidden fleet would move into position. The concealed weapons would be armed. The trained soldiers would take their posts. And humanity would wait to see if the Galactic Alliance was serious about their educational war. 3 months into their preparation year, human intelligence intercepted alien communications discussing their surprise at humanity's rapid progress. The aliens were impressed by how quickly the primitive humans were building defenses and organizing their military. What the aliens didn't realize was that humanity wasn't building anything new. They were just finally allowed to stop hiding what they had built decades ago. The greatest military force in galactic history was about to teach the Alliance the most important lesson they had ever learned. The only question remaining was whether any of the alien students would survive the class. The Alliance instruction fleet approached the edge of Earth's solar system with all the ceremony their 3,000-year peace had taught them. Massive banners streamed from their hulls. Formation lights created beautiful patterns against the darkness of space. Music played across open communication channels as if they were arriving for a festival rather than a war. Commander Vexhai of the Korthak Empire stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Glorious Purpose. His 4 eyes studied the tactical displays. With satisfaction, 67 vessels from 23 different species all converging on the primitive human homeworld. It would be the perfect training exercise for warriors who had never seen real combat. "Sir," his navigation officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the human homeworld." "Excellent." Vexhai rubbed his hands together eagerly. "Let's hear their desperate pleas for mercy. It will be good practice for the young ones to hear how primitives react to superior force." The main screen activated, showing a human in what appeared to be a military uniform. Captain Han Jun Seo of the Earth vessel Soul's Pride looked completely calm as he addressed the alien fleet. "Attention Alliance vessels," Han said in clear, unaccented galactic standard. "Welcome to the Sol system. We've been monitoring your approach and would like to thank you for the advance notice of your arrival. Your timing is perfect." Vexhai's 4 eyes blinked in confusion. "Timing is perfect? What does the primitive mean by that?" Han continued speaking, as if he could hear the alien commander's question. "We've just completed a major fleet exercise, and our crews are looking forward to some practical training. We hope you'll provide a more interesting challenge than our usual simulations." Laughter erupted from the human captain's bridge crew in the background. Vexhai felt his battle-scarred hide flush with anger. Were these primitives mocking the mighty Alliance fleet? "Sir," his sensor operator called out nervously, "I'm detecting some unusual readings from the inner system." "What kind of readings?" "Energy signatures that don't match our intelligence reports. And sir, there are a lot more human vessels than we expected." Vexhai moved to the sensor station and studied the displays. Instead of the few dozen patrol boats their scouts had reported, the screens showed hundreds of contacts throughout the solar system. Worse, the energy readings from these vessels were far beyond what primitive technology should produce. "These readings must be malfunctioning," Vexhai declared. "Recalibrate the sensors. Primitives cannot possibly have developed such advanced technology in the time since our last intelligence report." But the readings remained unchanged. If anything, they grew stronger as more human vessels revealed themselves. What had appeared to be empty space now showed massive formations of warships. Asteroid bases lit up with power signatures that rivaled Alliance battle stations. The entire solar system seemed to be one giant fortress. Admiral Yoon So-young appeared on the communication screen, replacing Captain Han. Her smile was polite but somehow unsettling. "Commander Vexhai of the Glorious Purpose, I am Admiral Yoon of the Terran Home Fleet. We're honored that the Alliance chose our system for your training exercise." "Training exercise?" Vexhai sputtered. "This is the great return of the Alliance to warfare. We are here to educate your people in the art of combat." "How wonderful," Yoon replied, her smile growing wider. "We love educational opportunities. In fact, we've prepared some lessons of our own. I hope you don't mind if we start with basic tactical awareness." Before Vexhai could ask what she meant, his tactical officer shouted in alarm. "Sir, multiple missile launches detected throughout the system." The main display lit up with thousands of projectiles streaking toward the Alliance fleet from every direction. Vexhai watched in horror as his sensors calculated the incoming weapons specifications. These weren't primitive chemical explosives. They were advanced kinetic penetrators moving at relativistic speeds. "Evasive maneuvers," Vexhai ordered. "All ships, emergency scatter formation." But the Alliance fleet had forgotten how to fight. Ships collided with each other as they tried to maneuver. communication channels filled with confused orders and panicked reports. Formations that looked beautiful in parades fell apart under the pressure of actual combat. The human weapons struck with surgical precision. None of the Alliance vessels were destroyed, but their engines, weapons, and communication systems were systematically disabled. Within minutes, the entire instruction fleet was drifting helplessly, while human vessels emerged from concealment all around them. "Impressive response time," Admiral Yoon commented as her face reappeared on the communication screen. "Though I have to say your tactical awareness could use some work. Lesson 1. Always scout your target system thoroughly." Captain Bae Dong-hyuk's voice joined the conversation from another human vessel. "Admiral, should we proceed with Lesson 2? "Of course, Captain. Commander Vex High, I hope you're taking notes. This next demonstration covers the importance of technological superiority in modern warfare." The space around the disabled Alliance fleet shimmered as human stealth fields deactivated. Dozens of massive vessels materialized from apparent nothingness, each one dwarfing the largest Alliance ships. Their hulls gleamed with exotic armor plating that seemed to bend light around it. Weapon arrays that could crack planets rotated to focus on the helpless alien fleet. Vexhai felt his four stomachs drop in fear. "This is impossible. Our intelligence reports showed that humans had only basic technology. Where did these ships come from?" "Oh, these old things?" Admiral Yoon's tone was casual, as if she were discussing the weather. "We've had them for decades. We just kept them hidden until someone gave us a reason to use them. Your declaration of war was exactly the excuse we needed to stop pretending to be primitive." The Alliance commander's mind reeled. But our scouts observed your system for months. They cataloged your defenses, your fleet strength, your industrial capacity. They cataloged what we wanted them to see." Captain Han interrupted, his face joining the conversation. "Did you really think we wouldn't notice alien scout ships in our system? We've been tracking your intelligence gathering for years and feeding you carefully selected information." Shin Woo-jin's fighter squadron screamed past the Alliance flagship, their impossible maneuvers leaving trails of distorted space-time. The human pilots pulled acceleration that should have turned them into paste, yet they flew with casual precision that made alien military doctrine look like children's games. "Lesson 3, Admiral Yoon continued, covers the importance of understanding your enemy before engaging them. You assumed we were primitive because we wanted you to think that. You planned your educational war based on deliberately false intelligence. How do you think this reflects on your own tactical planning abilities?" Commander Vexhai slumped in his command chair. Around him, his bridge crew stared at their instruments in disbelief. 3 millennia of Alliance military superiority had been shattered in less than an hour by creatures they had dismissed as barely evolved primitives. "We surrender," Vexhai said quietly. "I'm sorry, Commander. I didn't catch that," Admiral Yoon replied politely. "We surrender," Vexhai shouted, his voice carrying across the bridge. "The Alliance fleet formally surrenders to the human forces." "Oh, that's very kind of you," Yoon said with genuine warmth. "But we're not accepting surrenders today. This is a training exercise, remember? You came here to learn about warfare and we haven't finished the lesson plan yet." The human admiral gestured to something off-screen, and new contacts appeared on the Alliance sensors. Massive cargo vessels emerged from the outer system, their hulls bristling with weapons and carrying capacity that dwarfed anything in the known galaxy. "These are our logistics ships," Yoon explained. "They're bringing supplies for an extended educational program. We thought you might want to study human military doctrine in more detail. Don't worry, we've prepared comfortable accommodations for your crews while they complete their studies." Vexhai watched helplessly as human boarding shuttles launched from the cargo vessels. Each shuttle moved with the same impossible speed and precision as the fighters, and their approach vectors suggested tactical knowledge that far exceeded anything in Alliance military academies. "Commander," his communications officer whispered, "should I send a distress signal to Alliance Command?" "With what?" Vexhai replied bitterly. "They disabled our long-range communications in the first volley. Besides, what would I tell them? That the primitives we came to educate have technology that makes our best ships look like children's toys?" Admiral Yoon's voice carried a note of genuine sympathy as she continued speaking. "Don't feel bad, Commander. Your fleet performance, was actually quite impressive for a force that's been at peace for 3,000 years. Most species lose their military edge much faster than that. The fact that you managed to maintain any combat readiness at all shows real dedication. But how? Vexhai asked desperately. How did your people develop such advanced technology without anyone noticing? Well, Admiral Yoon replied thoughtfully, we had a really good reason to stay motivated. You see, we knew that eventually someone would decide we looked like an easy target. So we made sure that when that day came, we'd be ready to teach them otherwise. As human Marines boarded his flagship, Commander Vexhai realized that the gay 3 weeks after the Alliance fleet's capture, the real education began. The aliens had expected a quick victory, followed by lessons in proper warfare. Instead, they found themselves students in a curriculum designed by the most militarily advanced species in the galaxy. Lim Hai-wan stood in the observation deck of the converted Alliance flagship, now serving as a mobile classroom. As ground commander of the Terran Marine Corps, she had been tasked with educating the Alliance ground forces in what humans called practical combat theory. Below them, Mars had been transformed into the galaxy's largest military training ground. The red planet's surface was dotted with holographic cities, simulated industrial complexes, and mock defense installations. What looked like a barren landscape to untrained eyes was actually the most sophisticated combat simulation ever created. Today's lesson, Lim announced to the assembled alien officers, covers basic infantry tactics. We'll start with simple concepts and work our way up to advanced operations. Commander Zultak of the Hegemony ground forces shifted uncomfortably in his restraints. Not prison bonds, but safety equipment required when observing human military exercises. Commander Lim, with respect, my forces have studied infantry tactics for centuries. We may not have recent combat experience, but we understand the theoretical principles. Lim's smile was patient but somehow unsettling. I'm sure you do, Commander. Let's see how theory compares to practice. The observation deck's main screen activated, showing a tactical overview of the Martian surface. 2 forces were positioned for engagement, a company of human Marines against 3 companies of holographic enemies programmed with Alliance tactical doctrine. Standard scenario, Lim explained. 1 human company, approximately 200 soldiers, against 600 simulated enemies using your best tactical manuals. The objective is to capture and hold the industrial complex in Sector 7. The alien observers leaned forward eagerly. Finally, they would see primitive human infantry in action against superior numbers. Perhaps this would be the demonstration that proved Alliance superiority in at least one area of warfare. The exercise began at dawn, Martian time. The human Marines moved across the barren landscape like ghosts, their powered armor adapting to the terrain and atmospheric conditions. What should have been a straightforward advance became something else entirely. Impossible, whispered Captain Mordeth of the Vrelian Empire. They're moving faster than our vehicles could travel across that terrain. The human soldiers weren't just running. They were flowing across the landscape like liquid death. Their armor boosted their speed, strength, and endurance to superhuman levels, while sophisticated targeting systems gave them awareness that bordered on precognition. Shin Woo-jin led the first squad into contact with the enemy simulation. What followed wasn't a battle. It was art. The humans moved with coordination that seemed almost telepathic, each soldier anticipating the other's actions with perfect timing. Note the communication system, Lim pointed out as data streams flowed across the screen. Each Marine is connected to a tactical network that updates in real time. They don't just see what's in front of them. They see everything the entire company sees, processed through AI that can predict enemy movements 3 steps ahead. The holographic enemies, programmed with the Alliance's best tactics, found themselves completely outmaneuvered. Human Marines appeared behind their lines before they could react. Positions that should have been unassailable fell within minutes. Supply lines were cut with surgical precision. The terrain advantage should favor the defenders, observed General Kexrin of the Peaceful Collective. How are your Marines moving through areas that should be impassable? Good question, Lim replied. Human soldiers are trained to ignore traditional concepts of impassable terrain. Watch Squad 3. On screen, a group of Marines approached what appeared to be a vertical cliff face. Instead of finding an alternate route, they simply began climbing straight up the rock wall. Their armor's gecko-like grips and enhanced strength made them as comfortable on vertical surfaces as on flat ground. Your tactical doctrine assumes that soldiers are limited by biological constraints, Lim explained. Humans decided that was an unnecessary limitation. Our Marines can operate in vacuum, underwater, in toxic atmospheres, and at temperatures that would kill most known life forms. The exercise continued for 3 hours. By the end, the human company had not only captured their objective, but had eliminated all 600 simulated enemies while taking 0 casualties. The industrial complex was secured, defended, and prepared for expansion into a forward operating base. This concludes basic infantry tactics, Lim announced. Tomorrow we'll cover intermediate concepts like urban warfare, orbital insertion, and multi-environment combat. Commander Zultak sat in stunned silence. Basic tactics? That was your basic demonstration? Oh yes, Lim confirmed cheerfully. We saved the advanced lessons for later in the course. Next week we'll show you our special operations teams. They're really quite impressive. Oh Seung-min, the human strategist who had been predicting this scenario for decades, joined the observation group as they moved to the next lesson area. His weathered face showed the satisfaction of a teacher whose students were finally ready to learn. The next demonstration, Oh announced, covers tactical flexibility and adaptation. We've prepared a series of scenarios that will show how human forces respond to changing battlefield conditions. The screen shifted to show a different area of Mars, where a human battalion was engaged with simulated Alliance fleet landing forces. The aliens had numerical superiority, better positions, and theoretical advantage in every measurable category. Standard Alliance doctrine, Oh continued, emphasizes maintaining formation, following established procedures, and executing planned operations. Let's see how that works against human tactical thinking. The human forces began their assault in a conventional manner, advancing in recognizable patterns that made the alien observers nod approvingly. Finally, they thought, the humans were fighting in a way that made sense. Then everything changed. The human formation suddenly scattered in ways that looked like complete chaos. Individual soldiers began operating independently, using terrain and timing in combinations that defied military logic. What appeared to be a breakdown in discipline was actually a highly coordinated dance of destruction. Each human soldier, Oh explained, is trained to think independently while maintaining unit cohesion. They don't just follow orders. They interpret intent and adapt their actions to changing conditions in real time. The simulated Alliance forces found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to behave predictably. Human tactics shifted from conventional assault to guerrilla warfare to urban combat to air-mobile operations, sometimes all within the same engagement. Impossible, General Kexrin muttered. No force can coordinate that many different tactical approaches simultaneously. Human forces can, Oh replied simply, because we don't think of them as different approaches. We think of them as different tools for accomplishing the mission. Our soldiers are trained to use whatever tool works best at any given moment. The demonstration continued with scenarios that pushed human tactical flexibility to its limits. Desert warfare flowed into Arctic operations. Space combat transitioned seamlessly to underground fighting. In every case, human forces adapted instantly while their opponents struggled to adjust to changing conditions. The key difference, Oh continued, is that Alliance doctrine assumes warfare is predictable. You train for specific scenarios and hope you encounter those scenarios in actual combat. Human doctrine assumes warfare is chaos. We train our soldiers to thrive in chaos. As the day's lessons concluded, the alien observers sat in contemplative silence. Everything they thought they knew about military science had been proven wrong, not just wrong, obsolete. Commander Vexhai, who had remained quiet throughout most of the demonstrations, finally spoke up. Commander, Oh, may I ask you something? Of course. How long has humanity been developing these capabilities? O considered the question carefully. We've been refining these specific techniques for about 50 years. But the underlying principles, humans have been perfecting the art of war for 10,000 years. We never stopped. We just got better at hiding how good we had become. But why? Vexai asked desperately. Why did your people spend so much effort on warfare when you were isolated on a single world? Because we knew that someday, O replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Someone would mistake our isolation for weakness. We wanted to be ready when that day came. The alien commanders exchanged glances filled with growing dread. They had achieved their goal of returning to warfare and military education. They just hadn't expected to discover that their students were actually their teachers, and the tuition for this education might be higher than they could afford to. Tomorrow's lessons promised to be even more enlightening. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in chaos. Representatives from across the galaxy had gathered on Vex Prime, their voices creating a cacophony of fear, anger, and desperate confusion. The great hall that had witnessed the Alliance's proud declaration of war now echoed with very different sentiments. Elder Counselor Thekmar stood at the central podium, his 6 arms trembling with barely contained rage and terror. The proud Vrelian warrior who had announced humanity's conquest now looked like a broken creature facing the collapse of everything he believed. The instruction fleet has been captured, Thekmar announced, his voice barely carrying across the vast chamber. All 67 vessels, all 15,000 personnel, taken prisoner by creatures we dismissed as primitive savages. The hall erupted in outraged shouts and desperate questions. How could an advanced fleet be defeated by primitives? Where were the rescue forces? What did this mean for Alliance superiority? Silence, Thekmar roared, his old authority finally asserting itself. There will be no rescue forces. There will be no second fleet. We have received communications from the humans. They wish to discuss terms. Representative Zelnok of the hegemony rose from his seat. Terms? What terms could primitives possibly offer? They should be begging for mercy. The main display activated, showing Ambassador Kim Dae-ho sitting calmly in what appeared to be a human government office. Behind him stood several other humans, in military uniforms, their presence somehow more intimidating than entire Alliance battle fleets. Honored counselors, Dae-ho began, his tone respectful but firm. I bring greetings from the Human Federation and an invitation to discuss the future of galactic relations. Future? Thekmar sputtered. You captured our fleet. You humiliated the Alliance. What future could there possibly be? A better one, replied Jang Hyun-woo, stepping forward. As Earth's new Supreme Commander, his presence commanded attention, even through a holographic display. The Alliance declared war to teach your people about strength through conflict. We have provided exactly what you requested. Nam Yu-jin, leader of the diplomatic corps, joined the conversation. Her smile was pleasant but somehow unsettling to the alien observers. Your fleet is being well cared for, I assure you. Our prisoners are receiving the most comprehensive military education in galactic history. They're learning things about warfare that your species forgot millennia ago. What do you want? Demanded Representative Yulthan of the Peaceful Collective. What are your terms for their release? Release? Jang repeated, seeming genuinely puzzled. Counselor, I think you misunderstand the situation. Your people came to our system to engage in educational warfare. The education is far from complete. You? Kyung-soo stepped into view, carrying a thick datapad filled with historical records. As humanity's foremost expert on galactic history, his knowledge of the Alliance's past exceeded that of most alien scholars. Before we discuss terms, Ryu said quietly, I think it's important that we all understand how we arrived at this moment. The Alliance's records show that humanity was discovered 57 years ago. Your scouts cataloged our system, assessed our capabilities, and filed reports classifying us as primitive but potentially useful. The alien representatives shifted uncomfortably. Those early reports had indeed described humans as barely evolved creatures with crude technology and no military significance. What your records don't show, Ryu continued, is that we detected your scouts during their first survey mission. We've been aware of the Alliance for over half a century. We've studied your technology, your tactics, your political structures, and your military capabilities. We know everything about you." "Impossible," Thekmar whispered. "Our stealth technology is beyond primitive comprehension." "Your stealth technology," Supreme Commander Zhang replied with amusement, "is indeed beyond primitive comprehension. Unfortunately, for you, we stopped being primitive decades ago. We just never told you." Nam Yujin activated a holographic display showing the real scope of human civilization. Instead of a single world with basic technology, the display revealed massive orbital habitats, interstellar colonies, and industrial complexes that dwarfed anything in Alliance space. "This is the Human Federation," Nam announced. 47 star systems, 238 major worlds, and a population that exceeds the entire Alliance by several orders of magnitude. Shocked silence filled the council chamber. The primitive single-world species controlled more territory and resources than the combined Alliance membership. "Your scouts," Nam continued, "were shown exactly what we wanted them to see. One world, basic technology, small population. We've been practicing this deception for 57 years, waiting to see what you would do when you thought you had found easy prey." Elder Counselor Thekmar slumped in his seat, the full implications finally sinking in. You used us. This was all a trap." "Not a trap," Ambassador Deho corrected gently. "A test. We needed to understand the Alliance's true nature. Would you try to trade with us? Form diplomatic relations? Offer mutual cooperation? Or would you see apparent weakness and decide to attack?" "You failed the test," Supreme Commander Zhang added, his tone carrying disappointed finality. Representative Morkoth of the War Clan stood angrily. "This is deception, treachery. The Alliance demands satisfaction." "The Alliance," said a new voice, "is in no position to demand anything." The display shifted to show Kim Young-soo, sitting in what was clearly a military command center. As Earth's newly appointed Galactic Peace Commissioner, his presence represented a fundamental shift in the balance of power. "Let me explain the Yawar current situation," Young-soo began calmly. "The Human Federation has been monitoring Alliance activities for decades. We know about your resource shortages, your military decay, your political instabilities. We know which systems are defended and which are not. We know which species are loyal to the Alliance and which are considering rebellion. The implications struck the Council like physical blows. Humanity hadn't just defeated one fleet, they had complete intelligence on the entire Alliance. More importantly," Young-soo continued, "we know about the other threats you've been ignoring. The Devourers, beyond the Galactic Rim, the machine intelligences in the dark sectors, the plague worlds that your predecessors quarantined, all the dangers that the Alliance was supposed to be guarding against but forgot about during your 3,000 years of peace." Lee Airy stepped forward, her uniform bearing the insignia of the newly formed human-led Galactic Defense Force. "The Alliance has become weak, complacent, and ineffective. Your member species are vulnerable to threats you can't even detect anymore. Your military forces couldn't defend against determined pirates, let alone serious enemies. We offer a solution," Supreme Commander Zhang announced. "The Human Federation will assume responsibility for galactic defense. We will protect all inhabited systems from external threats. We will maintain order and enforce peace." "You mean conquest?" Thekmar accused bitterly. "We mean protection," Ambassador Deho replied firmly. "The Alliance proved it cannot fulfill its basic responsibilities. You declared war on us to reclaim military strength. We defeated you to demonstrate why strength matters. Now we offer to share that strength with everyone who needs it." Park Jin-woo, the philosopher warrior who had become humanity's voice in the New Order, made the final announcement. "The Alliance can continue to exist. Your governments can maintain their autonomy. Your people can live as they choose. But the defense of this galaxy will now be handled by those actually capable of providing it." "And if we refuse?" Representative Zelnock asked quietly. "Then you'll be on your own when the real threats arrive," Park replied with gentle sadness. "And Counselor," The real threats are already on their way. Our deep space monitors detected them months ago. That's actually why we decided to accelerate our timeline for contact with the Alliance. The main display shifted again, showing sensor readings from the edge of galactic space. Massive energy signatures were moving toward Alliance territory, signatures that matched nothing in any known database. Something is coming, Supreme Commander Jiang announced. Something that will make our little educational exercise look like a children's game. The galaxy needs protectors who remember how to fight. The Alliance proved today that those protectors won't be you. As the implications sank in, the Great Hall of the Galactic Council fell completely silent. The Alliance's grand return to warfare had ended with the discovery that they were no longer the strongest force in the galaxy. That honor now belonged to the species they had dismissed as primitive. The question remaining was whether the galaxy would survive long enough to appreciate the irony. The age of Alliance supremacy was over. The age of human protection had begun. And somewhere in the dark spaces between the stars, ancient enemies stirred in response to the changing balance of power. 1 year after the Alliance's educational war, the galaxy looked very different. The Great Council chamber on Vex Prime had been rebuilt and expanded, its walls now displaying the banners of the human-led Galactic Defense Force alongside the traditional Alliance symbols. What had once been a hall of arrogant speeches had become a center of efficient military coordination. Kim Young-soo stood at the central podium, where Elder Counselor Thekmar had once announced humanity's conquest. As Earth's first galactic peace commissioner, he represented a fundamental shift in how the galaxy approached security and defense. His calm presence seemed to radiate the quiet confidence that had become humanity's trademark. The quarterly defense report, Young-soo announced to the assembled representatives, shows continued improvement in galactic security. Piracy incidents are down 93%. Border conflicts have been reduced to zero. Trade routes that were abandoned due to security concerns have been reopened. The alien delegates listened with expressions that mixed gratitude with lingering unease. The humans had indeed provided the protection they promised, but their methods remained unsettling to species accustomed to 3 millennia of peace. Lee A-ri stepped forward to deliver the military briefing. As director of the Galactic Defense Force, she commanded resources that dwarfed anything the Alliance had ever assembled. Her forces included not just human vessels, but reformed Alliance fleets equipped with human technology and trained in human tactics. The external threat analysis, Lee began, confirms our earlier predictions. The entities approaching from beyond the galactic rim have been identified as the Hunger, a species that consumes entire worlds to fuel their expansion. Our projections indicate they will reach Alliance space within 18 months. A collective shudder ran through the alien delegates. The Hunger had been mentioned in ancient texts, legends of world eaters that had driven the first Alliance formation. Most had assumed they were myths. Fortunately, Lee continued with a slight smile, we've been preparing for this encounter since we first detected their approach. The reformed Alliance fleets are now capable of coordinated defense operations. Member worlds have been equipped with planetary shields and early warning networks. Most importantly, we've identified choke point systems where the Hunger can be intercepted before they reach populated areas. Park Jin-woo approached the podium to address the philosophical implications of the new order. His role as humanity's voice in galactic affairs had evolved into something between diplomat and teacher, helping other species understand the human approach to peace and security. Many of you have asked, Park began, why humans approach defense so differently than the Alliance did. The answer lies in our understanding of what peace actually means. He activated a holographic display showing comparative data from before and after humanity's involvement in galactic affairs. Trade volumes, population growth, technological development, artistic achievement, every metric showed dramatic improvement under human protection. The Alliance believed that peace meant the absence of conflict, Park continued. You eliminated warfare and assumed that was enough, but peace isn't just the absence of war, it's the presence of security. Real security comes from strength, vigilance, and the will to use both when necessary. Former Elder Counselor Thakmar, now serving as a liaison between the old Alliance leadership and the new human administration, stood to address the assembly. His proud warrior's bearing had been replaced by something more humble, but perhaps wiser. "I led the Alliance into its greatest mistake," Thakmar admitted publicly. "We thought strength could be recalled like an old memory. We thought warfare was a skill that could be relearned on demand. The humans taught us that strength is a muscle that atrophies without use, and peace is a garden that requires constant tending." The old Vrelian gestured toward the human representatives. These beings never stopped tending their garden. While we grew soft in our comfort, they remained sharp in their vigilance. We should be grateful that when we finally encountered real danger, we had already awakened the galaxy's true guardians. Commander Vexhai, recently returned from his educational experience in human custody, added his own perspective. His time as a prisoner had become an intensive course in military science that left him both humbled and amazed. "The humans didn't just defeat us," Vexhai explained to his fellow officers. "They elevated us. Every member of the instruction fleet has been retrained in modern warfare techniques. We've learned more about tactical science in 1 year than our species developed in 3 millennia. He activated his own display showing the reformed Alliance military structure. Ships that had once been ceremonial showpieces were now efficient fighting vessels. Crews that had known only parade formations could now execute complex combat maneuvers. Most remarkably, the various Alliance species were learning to coordinate their efforts instead of competing for glory. "The humans gave us something we didn't know we needed," Vexhai continued. "Purpose, direction, a reason to be strong beyond mere pride or tradition. They showed us that true warriors fight not for conquest, but for protection." As the formal presentations concluded, the assembly broke into smaller working groups to discuss specific regional security issues. The change in atmosphere was remarkable. Instead of the grandstanding and posturing that had characterized Alliance meetings, there was focused discussion of practical problems and efficient solutions. In one corner, human advisors worked with Korthak engineers to upgrade border monitoring stations. Their combined expertise was producing sensor networks that could detect threats light years away and respond with automated defense systems. Near the main display, hegemony fleet commanders studied tactical projections with their human counterparts, learning how to coordinate multi-species battle groups in preparation for the Hunger's arrival. The aliens' natural abilities were being enhanced with human strategic thinking to create something stronger than either could achieve alone. Throughout the hall, similar collaborations were taking place. The arrogant isolation that had characterized Alliance species for millennia was giving way to genuine cooperation based on mutual respect and shared purpose. As the day's sessions ended, Commissioner Young-Soo made one final announcement. "The transition period is nearly complete. In 6 months, the reformed Alliance Defense Force will assume primary responsibility for galactic security, with human forces remaining in advisory and rapid response roles." He paused to let the implications sink in. "This was always our goal. Not to rule the galaxy, but to teach it how to protect itself. The humans who volunteered for this mission knew that success would mean making ourselves unnecessary." Park Jinwoo stepped forward for the closing remarks. "The Alliance's great declaration achieved its intended purpose. You sought to reclaim strength through warfare, and you have succeeded beyond your wildest dreams. The only difference is that the strength you found belonged to the species you intended to conquer." As the representatives dispersed, many reflected on the strange twists of fate that had brought them to this point. The Alliance's attempt to educate primitive humans in warfare had become humanity's opportunity to educate the galaxy in the true meaning of strength and security. The greatest irony was that the humans had never wanted galactic dominance. They had simply wanted to be left alone to develop in peace. When that peace was threatened, they had demonstrated why leaving them alone had been the Alliance's wisest policy. Now, as ancient enemies approached from the dark spaces beyond the rim, the galaxy stood united under human guidance. The species that had once dismissed humans as primitive now trusted them with their survival. The warriors who had once planned to conquer Earth now served alongside human forces to defend all inhabited worlds. The galaxy's new motto, inscribed in every language above the council chamber's entrance, reflected humanity's fundamental philosophy. Peace through strength, strength through unity, unity through understanding. The hunger would find the galaxy very different from the soft target they expected. The Alliance's educational war had awakened something that should have remained sleeping, but instead of unleashing destruction, it had forged the strongest defensive alliance in galactic history. The students had indeed learned their lessons well. The question now was whether their teachers were ready for the final examination that approached from the darkness between the stars.